Hey everyone, this is Mason Hutchison, and you're listening to HerbRally, your daily herbal podcast. We come out with new episodes about 5 days a week, so be sure to tune in often. Our goal for the show is to help you along your herbalist journey, no matter what stage you're at. We have over 643 episodes, so feel free to peruse those episodes, and you're bound to find something of interest. Today's episode is yet another Herbalist Hour. This time it's featuring my good friends, Erika Galentin and Jim McDonald. And this is a little different sort of episode as opposed to like interviewing both of them. We're actually just doing a Q&A based on questions that you all, the HerbRally audience, submitted via YouTube. So if you're not already subscribed to us on YouTube, simply search HerbRally in YouTube. Should pop right up. And yeah, we come out with anywhere from 1 to 3-ish herbalism videos per week. So if you like the HerbRally podcast, you're bound to like the HerbRally YouTube channel as well. So yeah, all these questions today were submitted by you. Erika also had the fun idea to do like sort of a blind tea tasting session, if you will. And then Jim is supposed to guess what tea Erika is drinking based on the energetics of it. So that was pretty cool. That's more near the end. But yeah, I had a blast chatting with Erika and Jim. Stay tuned. We're all going to be at the Great Lakes Herb Fair come September, and I'm going to be interviewing each of them individually in person. So, well, hopefully that's the plan at least. So there'll be more like a conventional herbalist hour type interview with those two in the next few months. So I'm really excited to do that. Other than that, I've been mentioning this in the pre-show. HerbRally Schoolhouse members are able to join in on these Herbalist Hour interviews live. That's one of the perks. So in the HerbRally Schoolhouse member area, I just list the days and times and who I'm going to be speaking with, along with the Zoom link. So if you'd like to join in on these interviews live and interact and say hi and ask questions and whatnot, that's one of the perks of being an HerbRally Schoolhouse member. So it's only $10 a month, and you can learn more at herbrally.com/schoolhouse. And you can also use coupon code PODCAST at checkout to get your first 30 days for free. And then along with that, there's a bunch of exclusive content for our members. Just want to say a huge thank you to all of our HerbRally Schoolhouse members. You know who you are. So we really appreciate the support. It really helps us out a lot to keep producing more herbalist hours and more great content on the podcast, YouTube, and so on and so forth. So that's going to be it for me today. I'll talk to you very, very soon, and enjoy this episode with Erika Galentin and Jim McDonald. See you later.
Welcome to the Herbalist Hour. This is where community gather, merging the power of people and the flowers, the sweet and the bitter to the salty, the sour. Umami, it's time for the Herbalist Hour.
Welcome back to the Herbalist Hour. Today I'm joined by Erika Galentin and Jim McDonald. So I was wanting to start having maybe a rotating co-host type of situation on the Herbalist Hour, and I thought of Erika would be a great first co-host to have on the Herbalist Hour, and we were like, who should we interview? And then naturally she said, let's interview Jim. I was like, well, I kind of want to save my in-person, the interviews to be in person, say at the Great Lakes Herb Fair, and do a more in-depth interview with Erika and a more in-depth in-person interview with Jim. So naturally, this kind of just turned into like kind of a random show. So what Jim and Erika are going to be doing in today's episode is answering all of your questions. And these are questions that were submitted by you on our YouTube channel. So thanks so much. And we're going to just kind of get this rolling. So the first question comes from Lucky Forages, and they say, Mason, I'm sorry about your meniscus. Thank you. That was such a bummer. And they say, Corvus is so beautiful. That's our new cat. And they say, yeah. I would ask every herbalist how many pets they have and what are their names. So Erika, why don't we start with you?
You want to start with me? Okay.
Yeah.
So I am blessed to have 2 amazing pets. This doesn't include my husband, by the way. He's not on that
He's
list.
An animal.
He's an animal, but he's not a pet. So we have a very large, fully intact Rottweiler named Bear. It's actually my kid's dog. And he also is known as Buttface or Slobber Bob. He's got a couple of nicknames, Chewbacca sometimes as well, because he gets these really Chewbacca sounds. And then we have also my kid's cat, Chloe, who is just a little princess. And I just love her to pieces. She's a doll. And the 2 of them actually have like the same coloring. And so I've been thinking about writing a children's book called The Adventures of Bear and Cleo, but I don't know if I'll actually do it.
I love it. How about you, Jim?
I have a whole bunch of different mammals in the house right now. They're all mammals. So there's 2 ferrets. There's Fen and there's Teasel, and they're pretty awesome. Ferrets are, if you're not familiar with them, they're little weasels. They say they've been domesticated longer than cats, but I don't think that anyone who has a ferret would really call them domesticated. It's like having a wild animal in your house. So there's the 2 ferrets. There is my dog, Hazel, who is a red heeler, or an Australian cattle dog, if you say that. We might call her Hazel, or we might call her Hazy, or Crazy Hazy, or Crazel, maybe. Or when she's in a mood, Witch Hazel. And then we have 4 cats right now. We have Lavender, who I found at a lavender farm when I was teaching there. And then we have the twins, and the twins actually, depending on who you talk to, they have different names. I go for Pandemonium and Kitty Wampus. They're sometimes also called Goblin or Luna or the twins or the Wonder Twins. And then we have Black Cat, which is just the black cat. And Black Cat we also rescued, actually, except for the dog. They've pretty much all been rescued from other places. And that cat we found, I went for a walk and there was a cat locked up in a little carrier in a parking lot at a park with no food and no water on a kind of warm day. And so I thought to myself, like, we have too many animals. We can't take another animal. And I thought, I know what I'll do. There are cat people. There are cat people. And if I say the cat was left under these circumstances, one of those cat people will come and get it. And then when I posted about it, initially everyone was like, oh, where is the cat? I will come right now and get it. And I said, and this is my mistake, I said, I have the cat. The cat's okay. But we already have enough cats and I can't take care of another. But as soon as people heard that I had the cat, they're like, you got this. Bye. So we have 4 cats.
Yeah, I knew you were a ferret person. Yeah, go for it, Erika.
I just wanted to say I thought it was really cool because when I was a little girl, my dad had a cat named White One.
Oh, the white one.
The white one. Yeah. Just thought I'd say that.
Yeah, so I won't be.
I tried to convince them to name the black cat Snowball.
So I won't be answering too many of the clinical questions, but I can answer this one. We have 3 cats, and we have a Luna too, Jim.
Yes.
Now Corvus, which is the genus to crow and raven, and we've got Zilla. So, but yeah. So thanks for sharing, y'all. We'll kind of get more into some herbalism here, and they say, question for Erika and Jim. This is from Diana Donovan. What does your front lawn look like? What's your favorite place to sit in your outside space? Jim, why don't we start with you this time?
I think that my lawn is awesome. My lawn is like a great lawn. There's a lot of people I know that are like, lawns are terrible, kill your lawn. But I think if you just neglect your lawn, it's the little mini herb garden. So there's yarrow in it, and there's violets in it, and there's ground ivy in it, and there's chickweed in it, and there's that creeping speedwell in it, which I really like quite a bit. And then there's the prickly ash, which keeps trying to crawl into it from the edges. And then there's the black raspberries, which are trying to crawl into it from the edges. So there's like all of it. If I didn't occasionally mow it, I would call it an emergent prairie, because it's always in the process of turning back into a prairie or into a meadow. And then occasionally we mow it because it's nice to be able to walk outside. And as far as like favorite place, I've got a few different favorite places. So there's some spots out in the woods that I like to sit down by a pond where I planted some skullcap and some calamus and some turtlehead. And I really like sitting there, except when the mosquitoes are terrible. And then I don't like sitting there. And then the front yard is better because we live up on a hill. And in the front yard, that's sort of like what faces the hill. And there's not many trees in front. So there's enough breeze to keep the bugs away. And that's also my favorite place to go and like look up at the sky. And, maybe a couple times a year, I hear that you can see the northern lights down from where we are. And I go out and I look, and I always feel like I'm looking for the great pumpkin. Because they know it's like it's always cloudy or they never show up, but I stand out there and I wait and I look north. It's still okay. We can see some like here in Michigan, we have some pretty cool constellations. We have one called Orion. I don't know if when you were out west you could see that one.
Oh, we're asking me. I don't. I couldn't tell you.
That was always my joke.
We have Orion in Ohio.
Do you have Orion down there too?
We have Orion in Ohio. Yes.
You got me.
He's rather large. He takes up a bit of room.
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't know if you had it out west. When I called Howie Brownstein, I would be like, "Oh, we got this. Like, you got to come sometime and see this constellation we have over here. It's amazing."
Yeah, I know Howie's big into looking at the stars. How about you, Erika? What's your lawn looking like?
Well, I really have to say it's quite fantastic. Mostly because I am kind of quasi workaholic and I like to garden, especially when I have time off or I have a down day. I decide I'll garden. So my husband and I have been on this property for, 11 years now. And we've got 2 acres backed into a parcel of national forest. So we're surrounded on 3 sides by national forest, and it's wet and it's in a hollow, and we get 6 hours of sun, something like that. But similarly to what Jim was talking about, like in our situation, the forest is just trying to like grow into the opening. So we have to kind of keep it held back. I've got tons of native flowering trees. My gardens are extensively like species native to North America for sure. I've spent a lot of time collecting species and putting them in my gardens and stuff. But I also do a lot of food growing as well. So my favorite place right now, which it won't be for much longer because it's getting hot, but my favorite place right now is my greenhouse, where I do all my propagation. And I also have a favorite place, which is a little bit off into the woods. It's called Mellow's Garden, and it's where I buried my first dog, Mellow. And it's beautiful because it's just got tons of woodland medicinals, and there's a bench, and you can kind of look out into the forest and sit there and contemplate all kinds of things. So, yeah.
Nice. Yeah, we were just visiting Rosalie de la Forêt, and she has her whole front yard. She turned into a yarrow lawn, essentially. I'd never seen anyone do that before. Have you either of you ever seen that before? It's pretty cool.
No.
I haven't seen a yarrow lawn, but there's an herbalist in Toledo named Sarah Williams, who's a super cool, great herbalist. And I went to her place once to have a meeting for the Great Lakes Herb Fair. And her lawn was like, it almost seemed like it was equal parts like whatever kind of grass and really small little violet leaves. Like I've never seen violet leaves so wonderfully and uniformly integrated into the grass that it was awesome.
I love that. So coming up, we got a question. Well, we actually have 2 questions from Ji Ling, and she actually kind of broke them up for Jim and Erika. So we'll start with Erika here. Erika, please share some examples of herbal talismans. How do you specifically work with clients in aromatics, especially if also partnering with other herbal medicines?
Yeah. So let me see if I can answer this succinctly, because I could just blah, blah, blah. So I really believe in the statement that there is medicine in metaphor. And when I say that, I mean, specifically when we're looking at things like the stories and the folklore, and even the imagery that comes with the history of the use of a plant. And everyone knows I'm like the rosemary. Rosemary is my jam. It will never be a sage. And I feel like, it's a really great example when we look at some of the, like its origin stories and Greek mythology, and how it was thought to come into the world. And so, for me, in a lot of ways, you follow rosemary through, kind of English folklore, and we see rosemary show up in Shakespeare, and and through some of these stories, we get these impressions of, the grieving process and memory and remembrance, especially those who have passed, And there's like a tradition of using rosemary in the UK on your lapel at a funeral as like a symbol of remembrance. And so, this is where I feel like, the plants can come into our lives with their mythology, with their folklore, with their story, with their mythos. And that provides its own level of medicine and support to us, especially I think when we're working with, this within the psyche or the emotional realm, but also, in the spiritual realm as well, if you want to take it to that place. So I bring, with my clinical work, a lot of people's stories are, especially their stories of wellness and health are really deeply embedded in emotional experiences, spiritual experiences. And so when when this comes through in my work with folks, I do bring in talismanic medicine. And I would even consider, flower essences to work in this way. So, but I also love the aromatics as well. Of course, the physical plant itself, drying it, putting it in your pillow, carrying it in your pocket. I think Jim has a talisman that he keeps buried under his car seat.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. You should tell us that story, Jim.
So I probably initially learned through Christopher Headley, because I hadn't met him yet, who was this fabulous, amazing Tom Bombadil-like herbalist that lived in London, in England, and was dear and beloved by everyone, I think, who met him. Maybe not everyone. There's probably someone that always doesn't like someone else. But the mugwort was something that people would carry with them to keep them safe on travel. And in that way that happens sometimes when you get into herbs, I was like, folklore, superstition, why not try it? That seems like it did something. I don't know. I ended up with mugwort under my shoe soles. And that was fine and everything. But then I was driving back from a class down in Ohio. I was teaching at a place called Nothing But Nature Farm, which was like a CSA. And one of my very long ago students, but still awesome people, Amanda Schubert, at the time was her name, was there. And on my way back, I was driving down the expressway and there was only one car in front of me. And, I had mugwort leaves by this time, like under all the seats in my cars and in the, under the little tray, and just kind of spread out all over. I figured, why not? And I actually have a car. I'll make my phone do this. Let's say this is the way that your car is driving with the wheels, right? And I would be like sitting up here. The car in front of me, just like out of nowhere, sort of like slammed on its brakes right at the same time that I was looking down to scratch a mosquito bite, and I looked up and I was like, ah! And I hit the side of their car, and then I ended up on two wheels like this for a really long time.
Oh my God.
While I was saying, ah! Oh, shit. Oh. And when your car is like this, everything that is on this side of everything in the car is all falling this way, right? And it wasn't like a little period of time. I was quite a ways on two wheels. But then it didn't roll over and flip a bunch of times. It landed back on what was left of the three wheels that remained, and then kind of skidded off the road. And I came to a stop, and I was like, and I looked down, and on the passenger seat, on the seat that was sideways up here, was a mugwort leaf just sitting there. And nobody got hurt. My car got hurt. I didn't get hurt. The other person didn't get hurt. Everything worked out. And then like right after the accident, someone who left before me from the same place and had gotten turned around drove by. And so I got like a lift home, and it all worked out. And I think it was the mugwort leaf. Because even though that sounds like a ridiculous thing to say, it's also ridiculous that leaf could have been in my passenger seat, and ridiculous that like no one got hurt in such a serious accident. And I'm just okay with it. And as far as like this idea of, using herbs as amulets or talismans, I think this is a big left out part. And when you see books or chapters in books on herbal preparations, they don't talk about just carrying the herbs with you, right? And you could put them in a little bag around your neck, or you can have a special place to put them. But sometimes I'll just take something and like, oh, I need this, and stick it in my pocket for the day, right? or like put something and be like, this is, oh, I think the sweet clover is going to be on the dashboard of my car, not just because it smells nice, but like I want to bring it in there. And then maybe one of my favorite usages of something that's a little bit magical, just the presence of the herb doing something, is one time after my second boy was born, and Stephanie, my wife, and I were going out for the first time by ourselves in a very long time, and we hadn't slept much, and we're really behind on a whole bunch of stuff because we had this, 2 kids and one of them very little, and we dropped the kids off with my mom, and it should have been great and fun. Like now we have all of this time, but we've both been stressed out for a long time, and so we were kind of like not getting along great. And then I don't know, I said something not awesome, and pulled the car over into this little park. And I think what I said that was not awesome was like, I don't think I can even be in the car with you right now. And I like parked and got out of the car and started walking into the meadow. And as I was walking in the meadow, I was like, that was pretty bad. Like that was not a good way to leave the situation. But I really I needed to get out of the car. And then I saw some Monarda growing. And I thought like, oh, Monardica is all about letting like heat move and be released and like get it out of you. And so I picked the Monarda and I made a little bouquet and I brought it back and I said, this is for you. See, and Erika's doing that, which was, that was what I was looking for, but it was also a little bit like, can this please get a little miffed anger kind of out of you too? And then we could like,
oh, you said
and
that?
then enjoy yourself. No, I didn't say that. That was
Oh, okay.
No, I didn't say that. I'm smarter than that.
Fellas,
But it
don't
worked.
ever say that.
It was a sweet justice. It was a
Yeah.
sweet gesture.
Yeah,
It worked.
beautiful.
But there's a lot of ways I think that people can just have stuff with them. And sometimes, I've told people about carrying, hawthorn berries or hawthorn thorns with them for like emotional protection. And sometimes when I talk about it in classes, it's funny because there are the people who are like, oh, cool, he's talking about magic now. And then there are other people who are like, oh, wow, he's telling folklore stories. That's interesting. And like, that's the way that I like it. Like, I'm going to put it out there and, take it in the direction that you want to take it. But I do think it's important. And I think it's like, it's a way that humans have always used plants. We've always like carried them with us. And just by their presence being with us, they've had an effect on us and the situations around us, and it seems weird to me to think that, oh no, that's not like we believe all the other stuff plants do is real, but that's not real. So I kind of think that that's real.
I do too.
Yeah, same.
Especially. Oh, sorry.
No, go for it, Erika.
I was going to say it's especially because I feel like there's meaning in everything. Honestly, if you want there to be. And what is real is not something that's kind of universal, I think.
Just a quick break from the show to let you know about our school listings on HerbRally. So just like events, we also organize all the different herb schools throughout the United States, so you could find a herb school in your neck of the woods. At least that's the goal. So if you'd like to learn more and check out all the different schools, you could go to herbrally.com/schools. And if you're listening to this and you have an herb school and you don't see it listed on there, just fill out the form on that page. You could get a hold of me and I'll be sure to get it listed. So, but yeah, if you're looking for an herbalism school in your neck of the woods, just go to herbrally.com/schools and hopefully you can find something happening in your area. All right. Thanks for listening and back to the show.
Anyway.
Yeah. I'm still learning how to like navigate 2 different co-hosts and guests at the same time. So no worries. I'm sure more of those types of interruptions will happen. It's all good. Thanks for both of you sharing on that. Actually, Jim, I almost want to say I heard you teach one time about using like a hawthorn thorn as some sort of talisman. Am I remembering that correctly? Or
I've done that, but I once worked with someone and I mentioned this to them that they could have like a little bag of hawthorn berries or something like that.
That's right.
And they upped the game a lot. They made hawthorn beads and made a necklace out of the hawthorn berries.
Oh, beautiful.
All right. That's pretty awesome.
That's beautiful.
And I love that you use like a bundle of bee balm or Monarda as like a talisman for your wife. And it's kind of like if you buy someone flowers, that could be kind of a talisman of sorts too.
Mhm.
So as you were telling a story, you were using your cell phone as a prop.
Yes.
And you're one for props, and that's kind of Lee's question for you. It's kind of a two-parter here. She says, what's been your most ridiculous stage prop for teaching an herbal class? And please share a ridiculous stage prop class that did not work out. The best and worst stage flop and your many illustrious years of teaching.
So I have a big wooden castle, and a lot of people think that that's the best stage prop. Because I started talking about like the body is like a castle, and there's sometimes you want to protect the castle, and so you man the battlements, right? Use herbs that sort of stimulate your peripheral defensive, and other times you want to like strengthen the castle. And it doesn't make sense. You don't strengthen the castle by stimulating its peripheral defenses. You have to do like the maintenance and build it and everything. And so one time I thought, like, my kids have a castle, and here at the house, I can just bring the castle out and use the castle rather than talk about the castle. And so that started the whole castle thing. And I think that Jeline was here one day for that. Probably one of my favorite props is when I'm talking about energetics and I'm talking about like, dryness in tissues versus dampness in tissues, I'll get some donut. I'll get 3 donuts.
I was hoping you were going to talk about donuts.
And I will leave one of them just as is. And then one of them I will dry out until it's rock hard in an oven overnight. And the other one I will set in a little pool of water overnight. So it swells up, and it's not leaking water, but it's all swollen and poofy. And like the relatively fresh donut that you can squeeze and bend a little bit, that's like healthy tissue. And then the dry tissue is like, it's stiff and it's resistant and it's lacking moisture. And so it's sort of like shriveled and not pliable. And it seems like it's stiff, but it's not constricted. It's not like muscle constricted. It's sort of like, but it dry, because it's dried out, it's stiff and it doesn't want to move. And our tissues can get like that. And our tissues can also get like kind of soggy and boggy, right? And they're sort of like expanded, and their structural integrity is weakened, and you can stick your finger into it and be like, look, pitting edema. And it's just really fun to do that with the donuts because it's silly. And a part of what I keep thinking is, what can I do that's silly and like make it work and get away with it, right? And another thing that I've done is I've talked about how, I'm reaching in my pocket right now. I've talked about how elderberry can be used to basically it interferes with a virus's ability, like the ability that it uses to get into your cells to make copies of itself. And so if you imagine like I'm a virus, and this little amanita cap is a cell, right? And I want to get into it to make copies of myself, but I can't get in because this little red ring won't let me in. But I have my little knife, and so I poke a hole and cut through it, and then I climb in, and then 6 of me pop out, or 10 of me pop out, or whatever, and they all have pocket knives. And then the next year, your body defeats me, it knows what I look like. But when a year goes by, I kind of do something like this. I look different, but it's still a pocket knife.
Oh my God.
I can do that. And so everyone likes it, right? But and I always ask people, I'm like, do you want to do anyone volunteer? And then if they say, if you want to volunteer, like, wait, that's not enough. Is it okay if I point a knife at you? Just so people know what they're getting into. But one time I did this, and someone who was in the class had like a therapy dog. And as soon as I like pulled out the knife, I went, the therapy dog was like, and it was, everyone was like, oh, you upset the dog. And I was like, wait, this is supposed to be funny. Like, everyone's supposed to laugh the kick out of this, but most people were like, look what you did to the dog. You made the dog upset. You're scared the dog. The dog is like all nervous and scared for its person. And I'm like, but that's not the way it was supposed to work out. It was supposed to be funny. So yeah, that didn't pan out. I mean, if you bum out a cute little dog in class, it's never good for.
No.
Your prop didn't work. Like, if it bums out a dog, the prop didn't work.
Yeah.
There's probably been other ones.
So Eve Morningstar asks, how did you begin to mold your herbal path as a teacher, and what were your first teaching experiences like? And then they go on to say, I think I'd like to teach one day and be a part of connecting the community with herbal medicine and plants in general, but not really sure where to start. So Erika, do you want to start with that one?
Yeah, I would love to. I feel like, so back in 2017, when I started Sovereignty Herbs, I made this really funny, adamant statement of, I'm never going to have an educational platform. Screw that. No way. And then I realized that over time, that education and having that is a very important piece of operating as an herbalist in business successfully. I feel like, a big part of making a go of this wild work is, to be able to get out there and just start talking to people and connecting people with plants. And so, I think what happened for me was I realized that I couldn't actually work clinically with people like in a vacuum. I really was going to have to change my perspectives on not having an educational platform. And so I did. I started teaching, and I've done a lot online. But the in-person stuff is also really super important, and I feel like it makes in this like super saturated online education environment that we have, I think it makes learning about herbs very special, especially when you can, go on an herb walk or, do a plant propagation class or a tincture making class or things like that. And it just gets these experiences into the hearts of people. And it can plant seeds that you would never know. And so I don't know if I'm answering a question or if I'm just kind of rambling about my experiences, but I definitely started off working like predominantly like simple, thinking to myself, okay, well, what can I teach? If I were to listen to the voice that says, I don't know enough to start teaching people about this, you got to turn that voice off and just focus on the voice of like, well, what do I know? I do know things that maybe other people don't know. And so just starting off simply, like doing herb walks, really great way of starting to teach. Also, any kind of how-to class. I mean, some of the easiest ones for people or most accessible, I would say, is like, bringing herbs in as food, and really just getting people's hands on plants, really, and interacting with them as beings in the world. And I think that even if you're just starting out in your herbal path, or if you've been in it for a really long time, like going back to these really beautiful, simple classes in person can be really just nourishing on a lot of levels. So I think I answered sort of.
I really like that answer. I like not focusing on the negative voice, but the positive voice, like what can I teach? I think that's a really good place to start. Any input on that, Jim?
Yeah. So with regards to that negative versus positive, I know that a ton of people have heard or are going to hear like, oh, wait, you don't know enough to start teaching classes. You haven't done this, you didn't do that, and you don't know like all of the letter acronyms for all the different processes or this and that and the other. And you could get caught up in that all day long. But I was maybe 3 years into learning about plants and I got nagged into teaching classes. And when I started teaching classes, if I were to do that now, a bunch of people would be like, could you believe that person? Like, how can they think that they know enough to go out there and teach classes and they're a menace and like, this is what's wrong with herbalism. But it was through teaching classes that I got enough interaction with other people to actually grow my understanding and to grow from teaching about things that I've heard from other people to things that I learned from experimenting on people who came to classes. And it was important for me. Like I could not have gotten to all the places that I've gotten to if I hadn't started teaching classes without any formal any education of any kind. And so like, if someone is like, oh, you don't know enough to teach classes, I'd be like, well, as long as you don't say stuff in the class that you don't know, as long as you can say, I don't know, when someone asks you a question you don't know, then you're doing good. If you taught a class on like how awesome peppermint and spearmint are, or how awesome chamomile is, that would be great. If you talk about like 3 weeds that are probably growing in your lawn that will do helpful things for you, that would be great. You know, because I tend to dive a little bit overboard in everything, I did like a 7-hour herb walk for my first class, and I gave everyone like 30 pages of handouts and provided lunch and gave people a tincture, and it cost like $25. So probably don't do that. That was not ideal in terms of practicality, you know, but that was also like, I don't know, 25 years ago. So start off and think like, what do I know and what can I share? And a really easy way to do that is to think, what was helpful to me? Like, what was the thing that I learned that made me go, oh, that made me get it? Like, you know, I read about it in 6 different places. I saw 6 different people explain it in videos. But then when I heard it this way, or I thought about it this way, that's what really made it click for me. And if it worked like that for you, it will work like that for someone else. And when you share stuff like that, it just brings more people in. It brings more people into carrying out plans. And like, one of the things that I've never stopped doing in all of the teaching I've done is just doing like open community classes. And I've done open community classes just as like open herb walks anyone can come into, or talking for garden groups, or you know, talking for homeschoolers or something like that. And every once in a while, people have been like, you still do stuff like that? Don't you want to teach like serious herb students? And I think I would be bummed out if I only taught serious herb students and didn't have like this dynamic interaction with my community, because that's important to me, right? And that's what helps me get serious herb students. And that's also what turns people into serious herb students, because a lot of people don't know that they're going to get sucked into herbalism until they have that first exposure that really like makes them go like, oh, this is what I've been craving in my life. And then I usually tell them, oh, I want to apologize in advance for your cupboards and your refrigerator and the other people that think that the freezer,
your upcoming mason jar collection,
how much you're going to spend on alcohol and olive oil and beeswax and all the different places that bottles and jars will end up in your house.
Yeah,
you had so many different points I wanted to touch on. It sounds like humility is a big part of your beginning journey as far as becoming, like, say, a teacher. You have to know what you don't know and be willing to admit to the students that you don't know certain answers and whatnot. So do you think humility plays a role in all this?
I that just plays a role in my life, because I think it's an admirable quality, but then there's also just a practical, like, I don't want to be responsible for knowing everything. Like, that's more responsibility than I want in my life, you know, to think like, oh, I have to know everything, because it's an unrealistic goal. And the great thing about herbalism, and the great thing about, like, so Erika's on the show with us, but I have a lot of other friends, is like, I don't have to know everything, because I know other people who know stuff that I don't.
Sure.
And so if I don't know something, if I'm talking with a client, I can say a couple different things. I can say, like, you know, I don't have experience with this, and I'm willing to work on it with you, but do you want to, like, I can connect you with someone who knows, you know, more or has more experience, and then I can call around and ask people. Or I can say, like, is it okay if I talk about, you know, what's going on with you with some friends of mine, just to get some more insights that I can put together? And that takes all of that pressure away from feeling like there's already, for a lot of herbalists, especially if you're trying to do this as like a way to make a living, there's so much responsibility. We have to like advertise what we do, and we have to know how to do computer stuff, and we have business stuff to think about, and like we have to order bottles all the time, and we have to remember to like strain stuff out and make a mess of our kitchen. And if we just tack on like, oh, and I also have to know everything for everyone, it just creates too much stress. And the more that we can be like, oh, you know, one of the reasons that being connected to a larger community really makes sense is that when I don't know something, I can think like, who do I know who might know this? Who could I refer this out to that I would feel like is a good fit for this person? Or, like, wow, like someone asked me this question in class and I don't know the answer. Like, who can I tell them to look into? And so that's what I want to do. And that feels really good to me. It feels really good to like spread the word and spread the love, and really think about herbalism as being very cooperative and not competitive. Not like,
Absolutely.
there is a competitive aspect in the sense that there is something there, that there is some competition, right? In one given year, someone's not going to take 3 different herb courses, right? And so they're going to have to decide between this course and this course and this course. But most people aren't only going to take one herb course. Most people are going to try to learn from a bunch of different teachers. And, if someone's like, oh, I heard good things about you, but you seem kind of scattered, I'd be like, yeah. Right. I can be kind of scattered. You're right. Or they're like, you talk really fast. I was like, I do talk really fast. And then they might learn better from someone else. They might learn better from someone who talks slower, who's more structured, who does plant meditations or other stuff that I don't do. And, by not needing to do everything, it just opens up more avenues to like, be like, oh, this person is really cool and they do things different. And that person is really cool and they do things different. Or like when people plug for Erika, when people get through my course and they're like, do you do like another year where you teach clinical stuff? And I'm like, I'm too scattered to teach clinical stuff. Like I'm probably not the right person to teach that, but like Erika is really good. And I've had students who have gone and taken Erika's class and been like, thank you so much for turning me on to Erika's course, because it was really helpful. It was exactly what I needed. And it feels good to me because I'm like, oh,
yeah,
Erika, nice things about me. I say nice things about Erika, and it just all feels good. And that's kind of
everybody wins.
Yeah,
Everybody works. There's like enough room for everyone, I think. And I want to just second like the idea of, with the teaching question to finish off, all like that question is to also say that like, I believe it's about clinical practice as well. Like you don't learn to become a good teacher just by studying herbs. Like you learn to become a good teacher by practicing teaching. And so like wherever you're at in your journey, like it's always a good idea to just go for it, just put yourself out there and give it a go, because the more you do it, like Jim said, the more you learn about the experience of being in that role and the more you can grow and evolve as a teacher. So yeah, I'm all for that.
I know people who like their initial experiences teaching were not great experiences, but it led them to be like, oh, if they kept at it, they're like, oh, I was trying to teach in a certain way because that's the way I felt like I should, or I wanted to be able to teach. But we all have to think about like how we best teach, right? So for example, like there's a whole bunch of great teachers and I can't teach anything like them. Like I can't do that. I can't do like the very like, this leads to this, leads to this, leads to this, and here are all the pathways and all of the big words and like the very fine detail stuff. I'm better at making up like cartoon analogies and silly props and everything. And some of those people can't do that either. So it just works out. You just find the way that like works best for you. And whether it's more fine detail stuff or it's more storytelling or it's more like physically making stuff and doing, like try a few different things and then like see like, oh, at what point in teaching did I feel like, oh, wait, now I'm hitting my stride. This is really working for me. And it's coming out a lot more easily, and then focus on that.
I love the point about herb students usually do take more than one apprenticeship. I'm an example of that. I took the Columbine School of Botanical Studies, and then it was a couple years later, I was like, oh, I want to re-immerse myself in the realm of herbalism. So I'm going to go up to Portland and take the Arctos school, So yeah, you guys both made so many good points. This actually is probably a good segue into talking about Erika's new offering. This is Herbal Practice Connection.
An X?
With an X. Thank you. Yep. And I was just hoping you could tell the HerbRally audience what the Herbal Practice Connection's all about.
Yeah, I'd really love to. So this is a project that I've been working on for almost a year and literally birthed it out into the world at the beginning of May. And basically what it is the shtick is that it's a gathering ground for seedling through seasoned practitioners of herbalism seeking support and resources to build and grow their clinical herbal practice. And in a nutshell, basically what Herbal Practice Connection, or HPX for short, is its own network away from social media platforms and everything. That it's kind of its own enclosed sacred space. And in this space, we have 3 rooms. We have a consultation room, we have the apothecary, and we have the office and marketing garden. And each one of these spaces has its own events calendar. We have monthly themes that we work with. Something I call accountability quests, where I'm posing questions about, things that can really help support your development as both a clinical practitioner, but also as an entrepreneur, because clinical practice is a business. It is. And we've got Pep Talk Tuesdays where we sit around and do roundtable and talk about stuff. We've got case reviews. In fact, I've got one coming up tomorrow. So that's really great. And for me, it's just the beginning of something I'm really proud of it. I think it's really important. We're working on accessibility and making sure that everyone who wants to join up can be a member. Just a really, really cool space. Just fabulous. I love it. So I could talk about it for hours, honestly. And one thing I'll also say is that in addition to the pep talks or the case reviews, we also have a specialty training every month, once a month. Either myself or I have guest teachers coming in as well. So Camille Freeman's coming in July to talk about starting to work with clients when you don't have a dispensary, and what like some of your options are for just starting to work with people without being able to ship them herbs or whatever. Asa Waldstein's going to come in and teach a class about marketing pitfalls with language and the FTC and the FDA, and just really cool classes. Lindsay Felspach is coming in to do a formulation class. I got Mel Casting coming in. These are my buddies coming in to teach a class on reflective practice. So just really cool. Just there's a lot going on every month. And I'm really excited about it. So there's that. And am I allowed to talk about the other stuff too, real quick?
Go for it. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So the other cool stuff that's going on, other than the IHS happening in a couple of weeks, is I have 2 aromatic distillation workshops planned this year as well, only 2. So one is at Oshala Farm out in Oregon, which I'm really, I can't, it's kind of a once in a lifetime opportunity to go and distill on this farm. So I'm hoping for folks, especially who are out West, who want to come and hang out with me there. That's going to be pretty great. And I'm also going back to my homeland, back to Scotland to see my pals and teach a class out there as well at a place called Pishwanton Wood, which is now managed by the Life Science Center and the Ruskin Mill Trust. We're going to be doing like a 3-day intensive Gertian plant study distillation workshop there. So that's pretty cool. If you wanted an excuse to go to Scotland, I just gave you one.
There you go.
So that's what's going on for me.
So that's sovereigntyherbs.com or herbalpracticeconnection.com, but we'll leave links to all that in the YouTube description along with the podcast show notes. Right on. Thanks for sharing, Erika.
Thanks. Yeah.
So, all right. Well, let's keep the questions rolling here. Laurel Tree Wellness asks, hey, I would love to know how much weight Erika and Jim place on labs, and if they review labs, how they use their experience as herbalists to review them and interpret them for practical application. Thank you. So, Jim, you want to start with this one?
Yes. There are a bunch of people who read labs better than I do. Like, I can do a pretty decent job. And so what I'll tell people is like, oh, if you have labs, I want to see them. Or occasionally, I think you need to get labs. Like, I've seen that there's some presentation or some symptom that concerns me, that makes me think like this might not be a little thing, this could be a big thing, and we need to use labs to figure out whether it is a big thing so that we don't miss anything. And it's interesting because there are people who feel good about doing that, and there are people who really don't want to do that. They don't want to be involved with conventional medicine in any kind of way. And maybe it's idealism. Maybe, though, it's like they've had bad, legitimate experiences, right? And they just don't want to have another bad experience. So usually the way I'll frame it is like, getting this looked into allows us to rule out any of the big serious stuff so that we can feel confident doing what we're doing, knowing that we're not missing anything big and serious that we might otherwise not be able to tell right away, because there are some things that seem like minor symptoms that can be major symptoms. I just had a really intense situation in this past year with someone who had swollen ankles for two years. And like water retention is a big deal because it might be from minor things or it might be from really, really major things. And for this person, it was from a very, very major thing. And so it's important. But because I'm not the best lab reader in the world, this is a great example of what I was talking about before is people will say, oh, can I send you my labs? And I'll say, yeah. And depending on what I might expect or not expect, I might tell them right off the bat, like, oh, I have some friends who are really great at like seeing stuff in labs that I might not catch. Is it okay if I let someone else look at these? And I don't think anyone's ever said no to that, right? So it's a great example of I can rely on people who like have like super lab detective mind to be like, oh, it's not just like that number is high or that number is low, but like, ooh, it's interesting that this number is high and that number is low and that number is in the normal range, but it's at the high end of the normal range. And I might not have picked up on that. So having access to other people who really rock in those areas is super helpful for me. But I do think it's important. And I do think that one of the ways that I think about like the energetic herbalism that I am most skilled at and sort of conventional medicine is that energetics is a really qualitative system. And conventional medicine is largely a very quantitative system. But one is not better than the other, right? A quantitative system can sometimes catch something earlier when all of the presentations are actually kind of mild, right? Unless you actually see some of the numbers. And also, qualitative medicine is sometimes catches, or very often catches, a lot of things that just don't show up on charts as numbers because people will go and they don't feel good and they get labs done and the doctor says like, oh, you're great.
There's nothing wrong with you. There's nothing wrong with you.
There's nothing wrong. And then they're like, but I don't feel good. So both of those things really work together. And there are people who are really good at it. And there are also classes you can take to learn more about it. But it's definitely something that's important. I think that if you're working with people, having a understanding of what red flag symptoms are, like water retention, and there's other ones, but like water retention is a good example of one that people might, if they just know herbalism, be like, oh, they're retaining water, we can just have them drink nettle tea because it's a diuretic, or drink dandelion leaf tea because it's a diuretic. But that might not be appropriate to address the underlying cause of that water retention.
Erika?
Yeah, so I feel like there's a lot I could say about this. Should I just go for it? I'm just going to go for it.
Go for it.
So I think that if labs are available, I always ask for them. And I have, in my due diligence, done my best to study specifically like functional values and interpretation of labs so that I can take what is the qualitative experience of the client and also see a quantitative data set to, like Jim was just talking about, get a much better or broader understanding of what could be going on for that person. And one of the things that I I'll say first is that, on one side, I always say this to my clients, like, you are not your labs, and your actual lived experience is valuable here, is valuable information, is valuable data. So I try to, because I have some clients that are very fixated on that quantitative expression of understanding of their bodies, and which makes a lot of sense. But sometimes it can be troublesome, just focusing on what the paper says. And I think that in an extreme example of this, one of the issues that I have rolling into the 21st century of medicine are all of these laboratory tests that have been designed to capture and diagnose, right? So labs are never supposed to be the source of a diagnosis. They're supposed to, in medicine, I could say just that they're supposed to help support a diagnosis, but they're not supposed to be the source of a diagnosis. And so we have a lot of these quote unquote diagnostic labs coming out nowadays that I feel have not been scientifically verified, but yet are being used and paid for and are expensive, and are being used in ways that keep people trapped in this kind of fixation on data. Especially for me, I get irritated when it's data that it's just been captured in a way that's not been validated, right? So there's extreme examples of blood labs that I've gotten from clients where, I'm just like, I don't even really, like, I look at everything, but I don't really give a huge amount of weight to a lot of these tests that are kind of new and up and coming, and, pay out your backside for this full analysis of your, whatever, because there's so much we still don't even know. And also these tests have not been validated. So there's like one extreme of the other. The other extreme is, for me, I think a perfect example, right, is, so I work with a lot of cisgender females who have, are struggling with anxiety, right? The symptoms of anxiety being a part of their case history. And I'm talking with them, and we've had a couple of sessions, and I'm learning more about all of the understandable causes to them having anxiety reactions in the world. Like, who's not anxious these days? But I also start to pick out other parts of the story that I go, okay, well, there are a lot of things that could be going on inside your body that actually are mimicking symptoms of anxiety, but are actually something else. And, there are a lot of times I'm just going to speak for the cisgender female experience, because that's what I know best. Walking into a doctor's office going, I have these symptoms, my heart's racing, I feel breathless, like I feel shaky. They go, oh, well, here's the antidepressant or birth control pill. And they'll just call it anxiety, and they won't dig further into it. But if they did, they would learn that, oh, gee, okay, so we have things like low blood sugar, blood sugar control issues that can mimic anxiety. We have iron deficiency anemia, which is huge for a lot of women, cisgender, and even, anyone with a uterus. So we have all of these other pieces and parts of the human body that can manifest as anxiety symptoms. And if I'm there, if my client has been told for their entire lives that, you're just anxious and you need medication, to get them out of that narrative, to kind of go, well, let's look at what's going on over here, because this might be a blood sugar issue. This might be an iron deficiency anemia issue. And I can guess that might be a part of the story, is based on how they explain themselves to me. But if I have labs, I can see. That's where the qualitative experience of anxiety actually becomes the quantitative experience of, no, this is actually an anemia that we're dealing with here. And having that capacity to just slow down and zoom out, taking in that qualitative, taking in that quantitative, that's the stuff that changes lives, and so I feel like that's where labs really come in for me as well. It's like in a really important way. I'm also, just to speak to something that Jim said, is that I am the kind of herbalist that, like, I don't believe in this us versus them thing. I feel like modern medicine is amazing. And I know a lot of us, myself included, have had really traumatizing experiences. And that's part of the nature of the economics of medicine rather than the practice itself. There's so much that can be gained from engaging with that system of medicine. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's the whole pie, but I always like to encourage my clients to kind of say, okay, you have this amazing tool set from this tradition of knowledge. Like, let's use it. Let's use it. Let's use it to your benefit, rather than, and so a big part of what I end up doing in these cases where people are sort of orthodox medicine or conventional medicine averse is I help them to engage that system from a place of feeling educated and empowered, knowing how to go in and ask the right questions, to remember that they are the customer after all. And so when they go in educated, they go in with their questions, they go in with this is what I would like to have investigated. It can be a much easier experience for them to engage with that system. So that's a big part of my work as well, is really helping them navigate that. So that is my very long-winded answer to the blood lab question.
Do you have any comments on that, Jim, or should we keep moving?
Yeah, I totally agree that probably especially the low iron is huge. Low iron is huge. And it's one of the major causes of exhaustion and just deep-seated tiredness. And that doesn't mean that stress isn't also a major contributor to deep-seated tiredness. It can be both of them. But if you only do stuff that is supposed to help your stress, or you use nervines or use adaptogens, and you don't also increase iron, right? And increase the levels of the red blood cells and ferritin, you're not going to be addressing the whole thing. You're missing a big piece. And I've seen situations, actually, I've had situations where I just, I lost my client because I'm before we go down all of the different herbs we could use, you've given me a bunch of the major flags for iron deficiency and anemia. Have you ever thought about that before, or have you have any history with that? And it's amazing to me that a lot of times people are you know what? I felt like this before. I felt like this, 10, 12 years ago when this happened, and it was exactly the same. And you're right. It was totally my iron. And I found out because, it was when I was pregnant and I thought it was just being pregnant. And then my midwife had me do a blood test. And then I found out my iron was low. And when I got the levels back up, everything changed. And they're like, thank you so much. And then they don't need herbs. But that's okay.
That's okay.
That's
I mean, I always say to my clients, one set of tools we have are the herbs. It's one set of tools, they come in as one set, it's the other set of tools we have is our capacity to slow down and to listen and to connect dots, or to ask the right questions. Yeah. Sorry. I just jammed myself right in there.
No, that's okay. I can just look at this. I can cut my way back right in this conversation. I'm in place and I love using herbs. And I'm going to be totally honest. I this is royal fern. I think about this royal fern and I feel so happy. And I don't actually have a little bottle of iron, but if I don't want to snuggle up with the iron as much as I want to snuggle up with the royal fern, but nobody's got a royal fern deficiency. No one really, even as awesome as vervain can be, no one has a vervain deficiency. And it's really common that people use herbs to treat nutritional deficiencies. They use relaxants to treat magnesium deficiency, and they use adaptogens maybe to treat the exhaustion of an iron deficiency. And we need to get the nutrition first. That needs to be the foundational ground basis.
Yes.
And we use herbs on top of it because the herbs, the nutrients are essential, but the herbs do stuff that the nutrients on their own don't do, right? They add a different kind of magic into the picture.
Awesome. So much good stuff there. So just to be respectful of the time, it's 5:04, at least Central Time. Erika's you have like 30 more minutes. Is that correct? Or
Actually, yeah, I've got a client at 6:30. So as long as
Okay.
we can hop off at 6:25. So I
okay,
can
6:25. So, so we definitely want to promote Jim's stuff. We want to do the tea thing, and I definitely want to get at least one more question in. And so, what order would you like to do that in?
Okay, so for folks who are watching, I had this brilliant idea that because I love hanging out with my dear friend Jim and having all kinds of great conversations, and I just love the way his brain works. So what I thought we could do is I have a mystery tea, so Jim doesn't know what this is, brewed and ready to go. And I'm gonna start off with, and this is a great way to learn about plants, by the way, ones that are safe to consume. I'll just say that. Where you take yourself through like a process of really using and engaging with your senses to kind of understand or learn about the plant, you know. So I thought that I would take, this is going to pop, hold on. There it is. Ooh.
I'll edit that part out.
I'll take Jim through how it smells and how it tastes and maybe any vibes I'm getting off of it. And I'm going to use some energetic language as well to see if he can guess what is in my cup. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I'm all for it.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to do this rapid fast. Fusti. Do you know that word? Fusti?
No, I don't really know Fusti.
Okay. Fusti is kind of like dank basement smell.
Okay. What color Fusti?
Kind of like moldy green.
Okay.
And there's a brightness there, like it's bright, but it also has like a depth, like there's resins, something deep and resinous in it as well. But it is very aromatic. So this isn't like, it's not like innocuous. It's very obvious. How am I doing? Are you getting warmer?
How do your sinuses feel?
No change in the sinuses. But I will say that it reminds me very much of the smell of cannabis. Not that I have any idea what cannabis smells like, by the way. And so it has that deep resin, but also like that high terpene sort of thing. And the color that I get when I smell it is pink. But it's very aromatic. So it's like obviously an aromatic plant, not like nettle, for example. This is not nettle, you know.
No,
all right, so I'm going to taste it now.
Okay.
Okay, so slightly bitter, slightly sweet. I'm going to see if I can slurp. Hold on.
Good slurp.
Is that good?
ASMR.
Yeah. I practiced that one. It's already making me feel warm. And now that could be from the temperature of the tea, but I will say that this is definitely an herb that would be considered warming and diffusive. Like aromatic plants, I'm making this really tough because a lot of aromatic plants are warming and diffusive.
Okay.
It kind of reminds me of the taste of hops or the smell of hops as well. Hops is in there, another Cannabinaceae family.
Well, that takes hops out of the running.
That's what my guess was.
Yeah.
Okay, we're getting closer though. So it's drying. Like when I taste it and I swish it. Hold on, I'm gonna swish it.
You know it now after that swish?
Well, the swish didn't sound gluggy enough to be very demulcent.
It's not demulcent. I would say this is, I'm getting a lot of drying sensation and it's bitter and it's resinous. So warming, diffusive, bitter, resinous. Other energetics, can I say
When
this?
you say diffusive,
I would,
you mean tingly diffusive?
I mean like diaphoretic
Okay.
diffusive. Yeah, like move heat out from the center, diffusive. And it is definitely a relaxing nervine. I would argue that it is one of those paradoxical, relaxing, but also stimulating. Come on, you just say it. Just guess.
So could this be rosemary?
It could be, but it's not.
Okay.
I would say we got to go more relaxing. We got to go more relaxing than the rosemary. Yeah.
I was thinking it sounded kind of ground ivy-ish, but I don't know if you're the kind of person that would make tea out of ground ivy.
I almost did actually use ground ivy as the mystery tea, interestingly enough, but it's not ground ivy. But you're getting closer. You're in the right plant family.
Sherry's guessing, is it vervain?
Nope, not vervain. Sherry, not vervain. Not bitter enough. Not bitter enough.
And too aromatic. Not bitter.
I would say this definitely comes in a lot as it's very gentle diaphoretic. Specifically, I think of it mostly as a diaphoretic, a relaxing diaphoretic, safe enough for children. And
catnip.
Yay! I was going to start meowing.
Okay.
Nice. Nice.
Yeah.
I was sweating there. I was really hoping Jim was going to get that.
So, have you ever juiced catnip?
Oh.
No.
So, in the Physiomedical Dispensatory, William Cook,
he talks about that.
I love the Physiomedical Dispensatory. I love that book, but I always think like he would not be fun to hang out with.
No.
Like, I don't feel like he'd be
no.
But I think it's under the entry either for valerian or catnip. He talks about making a formula that is tincture of valerian, spirits of anise. So like a distilled tincture of anise, or nowadays we just put some anise essential oil in some alcohol to make anise spirits, and a succus of catnip. And one of my students was doing a medicine making class, and they're like, I want to make something different than like just tinctures and oils and salves and teas and decoctions and syrups and stuff. Like, what would be really interesting? And I was like, you could do a succus. And I'm like, oh, I heard about this one thing. You should try that. She's like, have you had it? I'm like, no, I don't have the right kind of juicer. I keep waiting for one of my friends who have like one of the crank wheatgrass juicers to get sick of juicing wheatgrass and give it to me. But they haven't yet. And so she tried it. And then I was over there sometime later, and she's like, you have to try this. And I took a little spoonful of it, and it was powerful. Like, I have never felt so sedated by catnip before. It was like,
I'm telling you guys,
wow.
It's like, yeah, it already, it's very quick. I experienced with catnip. It is a very fast CTFO. Do you know what I mean by that? You guys can fill in the acronym CTFO.
Calm the fuck.
Fill the.
Oh.
Yeah. I wasn't going to use the F-bomb on your show, Mason.
Oh, we're pro swearing around here, so.
Yeah. Okay.
You have permission now. Okay, so what was it? What was it for?
it's a really good, fast, chill the fuck out herb. You know, if you need one, which we all do, I think.
Catnip is totally underutilized because I think people think like, oh, that's like a kid you would. Actually, that's like an herb you would give to a kid, but I'm an adult and it's probably not strong enough to work for me. And I'm like, no.
I can't stand these little boxes that we put the herbs in. It's like, oh, this is an herb for kids, or this is an herb for testicles, or this is an herb for whatever. I don't really like that. I don't like those boxes. They're too restrictive.
When I first started at Mountain Rose Herbs, they had a free bin, and catnip was actually the first like 5-pound bag of herbs that I got for free at Mountain Rose Herbs. And I didn't know how to use it or anything. So I did make a tea, and it was, I was blown away by how effective it was, as calming as it was. So, and then obviously it has kind of an opposite effect on cats. But if you want to really quickly guess which tea I have, it's a bitter, resinous. It's I don't know. It's calming. It's fun to have after like 5 p.m.
Oh, it's an IPA.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. That was quick. That's why I did that.
That's why he was thinking hops.
Yeah, exactly. Well, right on. It's 5:15. We got about 10 minutes, and I want to get through one more question. Also, let's. Hey, Jim, why don't you shout out some of your work? Where can we learn more about you? Yeah, go for it.
Let's see. I have always got a a la carte selection of classes that are available through herbcraft.podia.com. And those are things that you don't have to like sign up at a certain time, and then you can't sign up again until next year, or like finish within a certain time. It's just kind of like you can go through them and move through them at your own pace. And there's written information and video information, and you can listen to it. So that's always available. I don't have right now any online courses coming up, although we are planning on taking the class that I just did on the temperaments, the humoral temperaments, and working that into an online class. We're just trying to figure out how to translate it from the way that it's interactive when I teach it in person to work online, right? And that's one that I don't think that will be just an a la carte thing, because I feel like that there should be some back and forth in that one. But every year from spring through summer, through actually late winter through spring through summer through fall through early winter, I do lots of plant walks around the Great Lakes region and sometimes other places. So come to one of those. It's one of my favorite things to do, is just to get people out to where the plants are and check them out and like watch people get sucked in. I love that. I love watching people get sucked in, and I think like, oh, they just like the course of their life just got changed. It just got altered to be controlled by plants. Sometimes people say like, how did you get into herbs? And I'm like, I think I was passing by plants, and one day they like, yeah, I think we could make that one work. And they grabbed me, right? Like herbs got into me and decided that I would serve them well. And I told that to someone once, and they were like, that sounds a little bit disturbing. And I was like, then I don't think that this will happen to you. I will also be at the International Herb Symposium, and I'm so happy to be there. I get to see Erika, so that's really cool. And so far, I have avoided doing the thing that I've done a whole bunch of times in the past, where I tell more people than there are lunches and dinners that I will have lunch and dinner with them. Because sometimes I do that and I'm like, oh, wait, I think I told like 16 people that I would like make time and we would have a lunch or a dinner together. And then it doesn't happen. It's nothing personal. Yeah. There's not enough time. There's a lot of people there, but I'm really excited to be there. And if any of you are there and you see me and you think, oh, that's Jim, I'd like to go up and say hi, but maybe not. Come up and say hi. Like
same. Come say hi to me too. Yeah, I've been saying to people, I might be in a daze. I might be like in like over peopled mode, but just throw a shoe at me or like some sort of object. Just be like, yo, hey, Erika. I'll be like, oh, hi, So yeah, don't be shy.
So gonna throw a shoe at Erika. It's just a shoe go flying by.
I'm gonna catch it with my teeth.
Yeah, if you're there, please do say hi, ask me questions. Again, I can't guarantee, as with Erika, the state of my ability to correspond, and sometimes I do like to like run and grab food right away because I'm teaching later or who knows what. But I definitely like every once in a while someone after an event will be like, I saw you and I wanted to say hi, and then I just didn't. Don't what I'm saying is, don't feel like you're not welcome to say hi to me and chat with me, because I would love that.
Sweet.
And if I would too. I'll second that.
If I have to pee, I'll be just like, I have to pee right now. Nothing personal, but I can't do it right here.
And I believe all three of us will be at the Great Lakes Herb Fair, which I'll link to that as well. So we got about 6 minutes. Can we try to do one more question? It's kind of a fun question. I know, Erika, you liked this one as well. It's kind of a fun question. Does that sound good? Maybe spend about 3 minutes each or so on it?
Sounds good.
Cool. So this is
like horrible, awful, depressing questions rather than fun questions?
That's for our round 2, Jim. We'll do that on the second.
We want a bummer. Send us a bummer. We want the bummer questions.
I really like
this one. We want to upset the dog.
You might. Who knows how you'll answer this one? But this is left by Peanutty Butterfly. So they also have like the best screen name too. And they say, what do you feel that you bring to herbalism that makes you different from others in the community? And Erika, why don't we have you answer this one first, since you might have to run?
Okay, so this is the moment where, as I tell all my students, it's okay to step into your shine, right? So I'm going to step into my shine. And I'm going to say that I think I bring that's unique to the herbalism community, if I could call us a community in the United States. I think I bring my training, my extensive training. I also think which is not necessarily unique, but the clinical experience I have is unique. I also feel like I bring my business savvy and my entrepreneurial skills to the table, especially where they're needed, and getting more people actually working with clients. For me, this is kind of like a heart path mission. We lose so many talented herbalists to the void, which is this place that you go from, you studied, and now it's like you've got to somehow land over here to start working with people. And this is just like the holy shit show of I don't know. And we lose people to the abyss. So I'm really passionate about there being more herbalists actually working with clients safely, ethically, and with accountability. And so I think I bring those skills to the table. I also have a great smile. And I think the other piece I bring, well, two other pieces. I'll go quickly. The first one is I definitely like to emphasize in my teaching and in my work the importance of the emotional realm in the work that we do as herbalists, and my perspective about just what the practice of herbalism is all about for me, which is way less about treating problems and more about supporting people back into loving reciprocal relationship with their bodies. And that I really nurture this idea that the role of the herbalist in people's lives has changed significantly from the days of the physiomedicalists or the Culpepers or, hundreds of years ago. And that, I kind of foresee or can envision how I have adapted as an herbalist to modern times, so I can bring that experience with me as well. And then the last shine, I think, is I am both like a student and a researcher of Goethean science and phenomenology. And I've been working with folks up at the Nature Institute in Ghent, New York, on an intensive program there. And what I really appreciate about what Goethean science and phenomenology has brought to my perspectives as an herbalist is really surrounding this idea of using our primary senses and our lived experience, our qualitative experience and really relying on that as a legitimate source of information. And so I do love doing plant studies. I love bringing them into my distillation workshops and all of these things. And there's not a ton of folks doing that work here in the United States. So I think that's something special and unique I bring to the table.
Shine on. What about you, Jim?
I used to play roller derby. There's not a lot of herbal roller
That's
derby
true.
people out there. I'll just say that too. That's my last one. Okay.
I love that.
I also do roller. No, I don't do roller. Actually, I think I would hurt myself on roller skates probably. Boy, I mean, zaniness, a little bit of zaniness, like a smidge, a little bit of zaniness. I think there's a bunch of things that I do that are unique, and a lot of it involves like trying to think of like silly props and like what I can get away with so that I can have a lot of fun, because like I want to teach people, but I also want to have fun myself. And I think maybe the biggest thing that I want for people in herbalism is to think like, I can do this, like acceptability, like I can do this. If I don't know which herbs are serotonergic or GABAergic or dopaminergic, like that does not mean that I don't know enough to do herbs, because I might just think of them in a different way. I might use an older way of thinking about them, or I might think like, oh, but this herb feels like a fuzzy teddy bear, right? And all of that can work. So it's really about like connecting people with plants, and in doing so kind of encouraging that, like, if you love plants, then you become a steward for the plants, and you caretake for them and their habitats, And when you share your love of plants and what plants can offer us, you do it within a context of like responsibility and an ecological manner, So like, oh, you tell people about plants, but you don't just tell them about how awesome this plant is. You also say like, oh, but yeah, like you have to make sure that you're getting this plant in a good way. You can't just get this plant from anyone else. This wouldn't be a good plant to get from, large companies because it has characteristics that require like careful tending and stewarding. And, you want to be able to connect with the person that gathered it so you can feel confident in that. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, like I feel like I know a bunch of things that are unique about me and what I do. And then I think like the way I do them is unique, but like what those things are is not so unique because we're all a bunch of people who love, most of us anyway, we're a bunch of people who really love plants and want to see people turned onto plants and, want to see this field like grow in a good direction, a good, empowering, kind direction, which hopefully has like the least amount of impact from commercial forces, which I know is a big ask, but it is my dream, that we can keep this community like really grassroots and, cooperative and welcoming and less judgmental and competitive, right? And then also like a thing that I think I've been trying to tell people, especially lately, and I know that I mentioned this when you had all of those questions that I answered while my dog was in the vet. That's actually, I recorded a lot of that when I was in the car while my dog was in the vet. I had to stay on the other side of town for like hours. So it's a good time to record those. But I feel like a lot of people sometimes feel like they're in this intense rush to know everything. Right? And if they don't know everything right away, then they're not doing something good enough. And I think maybe, so this is something that I've been saying a lot, is rather than learning with the goal being to know, learn with the goal being to learn and to keep learning and to keep learning and to keep learning and to keep learning. Because I feel like as soon as we start knowing things, we might get a little bit defensive of them, or we may become a little bit like less inquisitive to keep growing our knowledge. And if we just wonder about stuff a lot, and I love the word wonder because it means to like inquire, and it also means to be in a state of awe. And like, if that's the way that we're learning, we're going to be perpetually like always getting what we want, because there's always more to learn. And we're always going to be in a state of awe whenever we're sort of learning about the natural world and the plants that grow in it.
What a perfect way to end the show. Yeah. Thank you both so much for being on the Herbalist Hour and a Half. Erika, I know you have an appointment coming on, and I love you both as people and as herbalists, and thank you so much for spending your time for sharing all your knowledge and wisdom with us. That's Jim McDonald at herbcraft.com, I believe. Org. Thank you. herbcraft.org. We'll put that in the show notes. And Erika Galentin at sovereigntyherbs.com. So thanks also Sherry for joining us, HerbRally Schoolhouse member. And thanks y'all for listening. We'll see y'all in the next episode of the Herbalist Hour. Take care.
Love you guys. Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you so much. And that's going to do it for today's episode. Thanks so much for listening to the HerbRally podcast. If you'd like to hear more from us here at HerbRally, we now have a text message community, believe it or not. Basically, it's just updates from us. We send about 1 to 7 texts per week, notifying you about new events, videos, courses, podcasts. You get the idea. It's pretty much like our email newsletter, just in text form. So if you'd like to receive text messages from HerbRally, just text JOIN, that's JOIN, to the number 541-256-2895. Again, that's JOIN to number 541-256-2895. And to stop receiving texts, that's easy too. Just text STOP to the same number. It'll opt you out immediately. Okay, thanks again for listening. Have a great rest of your day.